Welcome to this explainer on the eternal migration, where we're going to dive into exactly how survival mapped the entire world. Imagine, just for a second, that someone comes up to you and tells you to walk across an entire continent. Oh, and by the way, you have no roads, no GPS, and absolutely no map. Would you do it? Could you even do it? Well, today we are exploring how our ancestors pulled off one of the absolute wildest feats of endurance in human history. And honestly, it's going to completely change how you view our past.
So, be totally honest with me here. How many times have you caught yourself complaining because your parking spot was just a little too far from the grocery store entrance, right? We've all been there. But there is just this massive, almost comical gap between our modern mindset and ancient reality. Compare our parking lot groans to our ancestors, who were quite literally walking across entire continents on foot, completely blind to what lay ahead of them. There were no neatly paved roads, there was no digital voice telling them to take a left in 500 feet. So how in the world did they pull off something so seemingly impossible, especially when we hesitate at the thought of a long walk through a parking lot?
You know, we tend to picture these early humans as these brave, visionary explorers, heroically marching off into the sunset. We imagine them with this profound sense of purpose, setting out to claim new territories and plant flags for humanity. But I've got to burst that romanticized bubble for you. Ancient humans weren't explorers looking for new lands. They didn't have town hall meetings where they decided to conquer the globe and make the history books. The actual truth of their incredible world-spanning journey was way more grounded in everyday reality. Okay, so if they weren't exploring, what were they actually doing out there? Well, populating the Earth really just came down to a super simple domino effect of survival. Step 1, the animal herds move. Step 2, humans need a steady food supply, so they follow them. Step 3, maybe a local river dries up because of a slight shift in the environment. And Step 4, the humans are forced to pack up their stuff and move again. Basically, most of the time, they were quite simply just following their next meal. Generation after generation, people slowly bled into entirely new places without ever realizing they were fundamentally redrawing the map of the world. Literally, they were just trying to eat. Now, we can't ignore the physical side of this. Today, we are absolutely obsessed with checking our smartwatches, trying to hit that magical 10,000 daily step goal for exercise. But back then, walking was not a workout plan, my friends. Walking was life. We're actually a species uniquely built for long-distance endurance. We definitely aren't the fastest sprinters out there in the wild, but our ancestors traveled for hours and hours every single day because their survival literally depended on just putting one foot in front of the other. They essentially mapped the world one step at a time, relying entirely on the sheer, stubborn, physical endurance of a really, really long walk. But look, even with all that endless endurance, you still need a route. Think of rivers as prehistoric Google Maps. If you're wandering through thick, disorienting forests with zero visibility, a river gives you this clear, undeniable path to follow so you don't end up walking in circles. But it was actually way more than just a route. These natural highways gave early humans almost everything they needed to survive. We're talking fresh drinking water, fish, and a guaranteed gathering place for other animals that they could hunt. Instead of wandering around aimlessly, they just follow the water. It was the ultimate ancient highway system.
Now, physical endurance and river maps weren't the whole story. There is a deeply ingrained psychological driver here too, and it boils down to one simple question: what's over there? Humans have just always been inherently adventurous and curious. You can totally picture it, right? Someone probably looked over a tall mountain ridge or squinted across a vast valley and just wondered what was on the other side. That simple, innate curiosity likely led entire groups of people into totally uncharted territories where nobody had ever stepped foot before. Sometimes that curiosity changes history, and sometimes it just gets you into a heap of trouble. Fortunately for us, humans have always been remarkably good at both.
Eventually, though, just following the land and the rivers ran its course, you hit the coast. And then what? Imagine trusting a few logs tied together to carry you across the vast open sea. As human populations spread out, they eventually had to figure out how to cross open ocean water using incredibly primitive, simple rafts. It is absolutely terrifying to think about the level of risk involved there. But without those incredibly daring early water crossings, humans would have never reached the distant islands and remote lands that eventually became populated. It was a massive leap in human innovation, and it was born entirely out of necessity. So if we step back and really boil down the core motivations driving all of this relentless forward movement, it basically just comes down to basic needs. Why take on the open sea or why trudge across a freezing mountain range? Well, they were looking for food, they were finding safer places to live so they wouldn't get eaten by predators, and they were seeking better weather. That is really it. They weren't trying to be intentional conquerors. They weren't trying to be famous historical figures charting out a globe. They were just trying to find a steady meal, secure a safe place for their families to sleep, and maybe avoid freezing to death during a harsh winter. It was all about practical, everyday survival. And this illustrates a really vital shift in how we should understand our past. History only looks exciting when we look back at it. For them, it was literally just everyday life. The monumental achievement of global human expansion was not this sudden epic event that happened overnight like a movie montage. It was a highly gradual, super slow process driven by basic environmental changes and fundamental needs over countless generations. For the people actually living it, they had no clue they were making history. They were just surviving, day by day, century by century. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. The next time your phone tells you a destination is a 15-minute walk away and you groan and immediately start looking for a rideshare app, take a second to think about the reality of your ancestors. They crossed entire continents on foot without even knowing what continent they were on. They just followed the migrating animals, the flowing rivers, the changing seasons, and wherever survival naturally took them. So next time you feel inconvenienced by a short walk, take a moment to look down at your feet and remember the incredible, eternal migration that mapped our world. Makes that 15-minute walk seem like a breeze, doesn't it?